Hello, my name is Michelle, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. Joining me today is JoAnne Lenart-Weary. JoAnne is a decorator, home stager, instructor, and so much more. She has had a career in the interior design industry for over 40 years. She founded the Decorating and Staging Academy and continues to provide assistance in building curriculum and growth strategies for them. She can be found at many conferences and online sharing her vast knowledge. JoAnne and I met about 10 years ago through the Custom Home Furnishings Academy, where we were both instructors. And immediately, JoAnne is the type of person that makes you feel welcome and at ease. Her humor and ability to laugh at things has certainly sustained her, and it very much lights up whatever room she's in. And so today, we're going to discuss how laughter needs to be part of our business equation, because business can be very difficult. And JoAnne shares how she's seen the industry evolve over the last 40 years and why it is important for each of us to evolve with our businesses to continually stay relevant. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hey, JoAnne, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Michelle, I am delighted to be here. I'm so excited.
Me too. And I just want to let our listeners know there is a little bit of a delay. So hang in there. If it seems like that you hear something, it's not a big deal. I promise you there'll be all kinds of good information. So stick around and keep listening. JoAnne, tell us a little bit about how you started your business.
Well, I began my business simply trying to find a legal way to get into houses. I had no education. I simply had an addiction to beautiful homes. So when I began, I had a wallpapering and painting business. I was very sloppy. I had my real estate license. I drove past houses at night so I could spy through the windows with their lights on. Eventually, my painting clients would call me back because the whole time I was painting, I would be coaching them about where their furniture should be. So eventually they would call me back and say, "You were the sloppiest painter I ever met, but I loved your design ideas." So my design part of my business came to fruition in spite of my lack of education and experience.
How long have you been doing this?
I am 2019. I am in my 44th year.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I look 23, don't I?
You absolutely do. Tell us, so when you started your business originally, I mean, like you said, you started it because you enjoyed pretty things. You enjoyed being in people's homes. You enjoyed that communication, I'm sure, even if you were a sloppy painter. But my guess is that when you started all of it, you didn't start with an idea of full-time profitability. I'm just guessing on the whole sloppy painter stuff.
Didn't. Yeah, I would guess you're right on the money. Truly, I was so humbled by the fact that they would let me in their house. I would often walk out the door and my clients would say, "JoAnne, what do I owe you?" It's like, oh my God, yes, I also get paid for this. But profitability was way down on the list of things that validated how I felt about myself in this industry.
Okay, so that brings up a good point, because making money is one of the ways that we're validated, right? That profitability for the project. But how do you think you got paid? Because you absolutely got paid to keep going back. What was it that fed that validation piece for you? Was it the pat on the back, the "I love my house"? Because I know when I first started, JoAnne, in the window treatment industry, I was my validation, my pay, if you will, people can't see us in air quotes here, but my pay was job well done. I love it. Will you do the next room for free like you did the first? That was kind of what fed me at the very beginning, because I didn't know how to price. I didn't know. I understood profitability, but that just was not feeding me, and my ego and my confidence at the beginning. What was it for you?
The very same, Michelle. It was the opportunity to watch that transformation. It was the opportunity to touch my client's heart, to visualize that what I did in that room was going to impact the way that their family lived in that space. I was so honored to be a part of that. And then one day I looked around and thought, well, I am busy creating this beautiful lifestyle for my clients. I'm neglecting my own family and my own lifestyle because I'm not thinking with a profit mindset. And that was my aha moment. I mean, in the early years, we would laugh about the fact that I was the tax shelter for our husband. We didn't have to pay as much because I'd lose money every year. And that didn't matter to me at first. I was so young. But then one day I went, wait a minute, no, I have this amount of hours. And yes, I love the validation, but I need to be able to do something that improves the life of my family.
How many years in do you think you were before you had, you probably had some small aha moments, but how far were you in before you went, okay, we've got to shift this thing, because if I'm putting in these amount of hours, this amount of heart and soul, certainly there should be some financial payoff on the other side of that. Are we talking, if you've got over 40 years in business, are we talking, were you 10 years in, 20 years in, 30 years in?
10 years is about the mark. And, it wasn't that I wasn't making money, because I was selling well, but I wasn't making what I should have been. And more importantly, there was no consistency, because also at that same time, I didn't understand the importance of marketing my business so that I kept a consistent workflow. So I would work my heart out for 2 or 3 months and then it'd be dead. And then I'd say, oh, wait a minute, I need to make sure people notice me. So at the 10-year mark, I said, whoa, wait a minute, put on your big girl panties here. You have a business. This is not, as you often say, this isn't a jobby. This is a business and a career path that I'm following. So I knew at that point that I needed to analyze my profitability, and I needed to analyze my marketing approach so that I could move forward.
And how quickly did it take for you to see a shift, JoAnne, when you did that, the marketing and the profitability, just kind of moving things into a more structured environment?
In 1 year, I doubled my sales. When I finally started thinking like a businesswoman, in 1 year, I doubled my sales. The following year, I doubled my sales. The year after that, I doubled my sales again. And then I hit kind of a comfort level. I kept growing, but in my market, I had reached a point where I was consistently at 6 figures. And we're talking many years ago here. So I worked real hard to get there, but I positioned myself as the go-to person. And, once I started making money, then it was like, who cares if they like the room? I made a profit on this job. So, the two validators now came hand in hand. But remember, when I began, Michelle, there was not the support that we have now. Again, I have a small market. There were not people I could reach out to. If I did, I remember one woman saying to me one time, you are like an eager little puppy. Because I would get together with someone that did what I did, and it was like, oh, and then you can, and then you can, and then you can. And the world at that time was about keeping your cards very close to your vest. Nobody shared vendors. Nobody shared pricing. So at that time, at that time, it truly was learn as you go. Our market is so blessed now that there's people like you and mentors like myself that have been around a long time that say, hey, wait a minute, no, don't go down that path. So had I started at this time, I would have been profitable. I wouldn't have wasted a decade playing.
Right. I wasted my fair share of time as well because I was connecting, I think, to more of the heart of the consumer and not really, I wanted them to be happy with what I did. And I was also kind of finding my own way. And I don't think that's abnormal. I've actually found it to be very normal with people starting a business. That first year you come in, you're confident about some pieces, you're not so confident about another. You're really trying to test what you're putting into the marketplace to make sure that that's what the consumer wants at a certain price in a certain way. And all of those things kind of feed into it until you kind of get your feet under you. And then you realize, okay, wait a minute, we've got a great product and service. The market wants it. They're willing to pay for it. I need to let them pay for it. I need to let them pay instead of giving these things, giving and almost like we're feeling like we need to give. And I remember when my big aha was when somebody said, wow, that's all you're charging? I would have paid double that. And they meant it as a compliment because the work was outstanding. But I remember just kind of looking at them shell-shocked and smiling and going out to my car and crying and thinking, if they would have paid double, why didn't I have the confidence to charge double? That's ridiculous. And then I remember years in.
No, because you've nailed it. It is all about the confidence and valuing yourself, because at the beginning we do have that assumption, well, if I can do this, it can't be that big of a deal. And God gives each of us a talent, and we need to recognize this. Yes. I remember years ago a woman saying to me, why should I take your class? And I said to her, because I teach the best class in the country. And she said, well, you're not very humble. I said, oh, yes, I am. I know what I'm really good at, but I also know what I'm really bad at. So I started to understand that the talent I had been blessed with was not the same for everybody else. So exactly what you're saying, that confidence. And one day you wake up and say, oh, yeah, I'm doing something or providing a service that not everyone can.
So I remember when someone offered me a job doing what I do to come into their company, but they wanted me to come in as an employee. I did not want to be an employee. I had just started my own firm. And I said to them, I'll come consult. And they were throwing money at me. They were throwing company ownership at me. I mean, they were throwing a package at me that years earlier I would have been clamoring for. And I looked at it and I thought, but I don't want to do what you want me to do. Do I want the packagey stuff? Oh, yeah. But I don't want to do what you want me to do. But what it made me consider was to take a step back and go, wait a minute. If they think I'm worth that, if they're willing to pay me that, then that tells me the market can bear this particular skill set. And now what am I going to do with it, right? And I remember meeting you 10 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we met, and it was at CHF Academy, and you were coming in and teaching the color classes and the redesign classes, and I just remember, you saying, like, I teach the best class, and I remember thinking, wow, okay, that's cool. I like that. I think that's great to know what you're great at. And I think the reason that it struck me, JoAnne, is because in 2008, I had made the comment in December of 2008, you know what? I really want to teach at CHF Academy, but I don't know that I have anything to offer that the industry needs. Now I look back, and I'd already been teaching in other venues. I'd taught at IWCE and all other things, but I really had so taken for granted the profitability, the pricing, the money. I assumed everybody else was doing what I was doing, right? Because you didn't talk about it back then, not at the same way that we talk about it now. There was no pricing class. There was no profitability conversation. No, but I kept thinking people were holding their cards tight to the vest until I realized they didn't even know what cards they had. So it wasn't that they weren't showing me. They didn't even know what they were, right? They were blank. And so now here we are 10 years later, and I know my stuff. I know what I'm talking about with pricing and profitability and how to make money and doing it, like you said, with our God-given talents, with what we love, without cheating and doing all those horrible things. I know how to do it, right? And what is so cool was that when I realized not everybody knew. And that's kind of when you realized, your true value. They're hiring you because they cannot do what you can do. They can do a lot of other things. Like I would not be the best person to go in and teach you color. I know color, but I am not excellent at color. I am excellent at money, right? That's just what I'm excellent at. You're excellent at decorating and staging. And then us each kind of owning our value in that then puts us in a position, I think, to price what we're worth, to love what we do, to be passionate about what we do, and then to share our gifts with the world. And that's the way we want to build a business.
Absolutely. And I think also, for me in those early years, I had been in a physically abusive marriage for many years. All of that stuff had impacted my opinion of myself. So I also think that when a client loved what I did, I just needed validation and stroking so much at that time. That was more important than money. And I mean, I can tear up all these years later just thinking of that poor little me at that time, because I truly was a poor little me with the self-awareness of a gnat. And so, thank God as we grow and we experience and we make mistakes and we learn, I thank God makes us get so much wiser in the process. And then part of that is where you start saying, hey, I'm worth this money and I need to make money because it's going to make my life for my children better. And that's a huge driver when we start thinking that way.
I think it's interesting, your life experience that led you to have a need to be validated or not validated in a certain way, the abusive relationships and things. Interestingly for me, I think my need for validation came from a slightly different place, in that I had been validated in corporate because of the degree and the work and very kind of engineering, mechanical, computer science. I mean, that's what I did, right? Built software. I knew what I was building. There was a value to the software. We knew who we were selling it to. I had worked with the large companies as a business analyst. I'd done those things and could see the outcome. And I was part of a bigger validation, if you will, than me. And now all of a sudden I've got to go into somebody's house with this creative idea and have it validated. I had not ever learned how to have a creative idea as a standalone validated. Like being validated as part of a team is one thing. So that if you go up as a team. If you go down, you go down as a team. But when you are standing in front of that client now in a one-to-one with an idea that's come into your head, or I've made this window treatment or these beautiful pillows and bedding, and now I'm waiting on their response. And I think I had to learn how to handle that validation in it. Like I always say, I want him to cry and love it, but I want him to give me a check as I walk out the door. Like I need both. I don't just want the validation.
Right.
But I do think that I had to learn, and I needed that awareness. Mine just came from a different place, from a place of I didn't have a degree behind my name. I didn't have ABC and XYZ. I had all of that in corporate. So there were these pieces of paper, these documents that said, Michelle has a degree, Michelle can do this. I had a GPA behind me. I had all those things. And I almost feel like in some ways I moved over to a creative industry after 10 years of that, and none of that mattered. And so I had to really find what mattered for my own validation, and then how to make money at that. It was a left brain, right brain conversation for me.
Yeah, that makes complete and total sense in what you're saying. And that's where, as business women and men, that I'm sure there's some of them listening, we have to find that balance between our right and left brain. You were so far one direction, I was so far the other direction. And it's finding that place in the middle. And it's also finding a love and an appreciation for the part you don't like to do, and understand all of those puzzle pieces need to come together.
Yes. I also remember so many things about you. I just have to tell you, I've been looking forward to this interview, because even when things are tough and difficult, oh my gosh, you find a way to make us laugh. I remember in class, I remember us being out in Vegas. I don't know if you remember this, and you had a class that you were teaching, and you put up a picture of a guy jumping off the top of a waterfall, and you didn't realize until you blew it up on the big screen that the poor guy didn't have any clothes on. Do you remember that? I just remember the story, the things that you tell. Oh my gosh. And then I've sat into so many of your seminars, and I love how you interject humor, your mother with her hat. I mean, just all kinds of super funny things. And so laughter is a big deal in your life, and it comes easily for you. Yet, that's something interesting when you tell me that you come from an abusive relationship and have and the self-awareness of a gnat. Yet the JoAnne that I met years later was a JoAnne that was confident, but that was fun and humble and easy to meet and just enjoyed life. Where does just this joy and this laughter come from? Because you've been through quite a few knockdowns in business life and in personal.
I have, but I think you have to maintain that sense of humor, or life isn't really worthwhile. You have to find the joy in the moment, no matter how small that joy may be. And I also found that laughter helped my students relate to what I was teaching. They remembered it much more if I told them the crazy story, like my mom with the big hat, or the red toilet that I painted, that the paint bonded to my first husband's skin and not to the paint, not to the toilet seat. When I share those kind of stories, it's like you're going to remember it. And I think it's also important when we are where you and I are, we're at a place in our career that people look at us and think, oh my goodness, how can I ever have a business like they do? They need to know that, by God, in the process, I have done some really stupid things, and you can't take yourself too seriously. I remember installing blinds. It was my first blind installation in a kitchen for a client. I got all done with the installation, and she handed me the check. She was delighted with everything I had done. And I opened up the door to go outside, and all the screws from the brackets were sticking out on the outside of the door. In my attempt to make sure the brackets didn't fall, I used screws that were twice as long as the depth of the door. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I opened the door, and here's all these screws sticking through. And I looked at her and I said, did I tell you that today's job comes with a free hat rack? And of course, she laughed as well. And so, I was able to salvage that. Of course, I repaired the door. My client was lovely. But if I would not have gone for laughter at that point, it would have had a whole different tone to it. Of course, I was apologetic, but nevertheless, I diverted it with humor.
But it's
So
a door.
laughter just has to be. It's a door. It's a door. So, laughter has to be an important part of what we do. And as I said, at the beginning, I took my mistakes so seriously. And then it was like I always said to my children, is anyone going to die from this? And will it matter in a year? If not, let's give it 5 minutes and move on, kids. And that's what we have to do in business.
I think that is such an important skill. And I will tell you, I'm probably still working on that skill. I certainly have not accomplished it quite as well as you have. I know in our home, we have dyslexia. There are many members in my immediate family. So sometimes things happen backwards. Things happen in weird ways around here. Like I remember one of my sons put a new door handle on, and it was one that has like the wide handle, so it's not like a knob. And he put it on. He was so proud of himself, and then it wouldn't open. The door wouldn't open because it was on the wrong side. Just crazy stuff like that. And we've learned in our home, when stupid stuff happens like that, or we make a mistake, we usually just say dyslexia strikes again, and then we can laugh about it. But I don't know that I have always been, and certainly probably still am not, as forgiving of my own personal mistakes. I think sometimes we take them as if they're so serious, and they're not. I'm not trying to, like you didn't discount the fact that the door needed to be repaired, but you also didn't look at it and realize that you just ruined the whole world going forward because of a door. And so have you always been able to laugh at your mistakes, JoAnne, or is that something that a skill set that you acquired as you've aged in wisdom and in life experience? Because I really think that is a huge gift that you have. And I know a lot of, especially type A go-getter achievers, the conversation in their head, and our heads can be so negative, so demanding, and so critical, not forgiving, not get back up, not growth oriented. And so I just know I picked that up on you, but it makes people want to be around you, and it makes people want to try, because it's okay if it doesn't work out. Do you know what I mean? So has that been something you've always had since childhood?
Yes, I'm a silly person by nature. I am truly a silly person, and I laugh at myself very easily. I am typically the person at a family event that people want to sit next to because they know I'm going to be funny. So yeah, that it is something. And when people respond to that, then I think it also becomes a skill set that you finesse, because my ability to laugh at myself and my ability to find the humor in a situation does make me more approachable. And as you said, it makes people want to sit next to you, because it's like, all right, what is going to come out of her mouth? So when you see you have something that's working for you, you try to be better at it.
I think too, and I think you attract the fun, right? I think you, not just I want to sit by you, and you're right, sitting by you, you really don't know what's going to come out of your mouth next. But I think that is so hysterical. It's like you draw these things to you. I don't know how you do it. I mean, I'm not saying silly things don't happen in my life, but maybe I need to sit back and capture them a little bit more. Maybe I need to sit back and recognize them and then just belly laugh over them before I move on. I think I'm going to try that. That's what I want everybody to try, is just kind of find a way to laugh about it instead of getting so upset about it. But
absolutely.
But oh my gosh, you are a breath of fresh air.
I think what becomes important in that is that you learn that failure is not as terrifying as we think it may be. Our fear of doing something stupid or looking silly in front of somebody. It stops us so often from experiencing life. So by learning to laugh at yourself and your mistakes, I think it's going to make you more successful in the long run. I think part of my biggest skill set has always been that I have more chutzpah than smarts and no fear of failure. I mean, if I don't make it, well, then I'm going to try it a different way. And I think if all of us would give ourselves that permission, you're going to enjoy your business and life a whole lot more.
I definitely have seen that by being on the outside watching you and your career over the last 10 years, because not everything's gone the way you wanted it to go. There have been challenges and ups and downs and all kinds of things, right? Which happens to all of us. But yours were a little more visual in some cases. And to see you, rebuild relationships and come back in other directions and try something a different way and approach, not like you gave up your love of staging and decorating, you just found another way to come back into the marketplace. It's almost like I keep waiting to see how JoAnne reinvents herself, but you're doing the same thing, just in a different way. I mean, you're still staging and decorating, you're still teaching color, you're still doing all these foundational things, but you're offering them up in different ways. And I'll say it also keeps you fresh and keeps you, a little more cutting edge because you're not fearful. And, let's be honest, when we've been in an industry, I've only been in this industry, I guess, 19 years. You've been in it over 40. It is hugely different than when we started. I mean, so very different than when we started, right? And in all aspects.
Right.
But to be a woman with your wisdom and the years and the longevity in this industry that you've had, and to still be cutting edge is amazing to me, because it is so easy to get comfortable. And when things don't work the way we think they should work or that they've always worked, it is super easy to say, well, then I'm done or I'm going to give up. You don't do that. You just keep coming back at it in another way. Where does that tenacity come from?
I think part of that comes from what you and I talked about at the beginning, that sense of nurturing. So I do what I do because I want to make a living. That is a piece of the puzzle. I want that profitability. But I also do what I do because I'm a nurturer by nature. And I know that what I've experienced can help someone else. So I think so often when we're in that creative field, you start the design process because you want to make people happy in their houses. You want to share your talent with them. And so that's often, I feel like I still have a lot to say. I still have a lot of people to help. And yes, if I can be profitable during the process, then that makes it a win-win. But my desire to keep coming back is I find new ways to tell my story. I find new ways to help that designer that's 21 and just out of school and has no idea what she's walking into. And I think for all of us, we have a responsibility to be relevant. We have to be relevant for our clients, so we're giving them great design. We have to be relevant in the staging industry to know how that's changed. And we have to be relevant in the way that we help one another. Certainly even for you. I mean, if you look at the class you teach now, as opposed to 10 years ago, you have found better ways to tell the stories and teach the lesson. We get better every class we teach because our students make us better.
Yes, they do. The experiences come out differently. We learn where we can hit the mark and where we may have missed it based on other people's reactions. So let me ask you this. How has the staging industry and the decorating industry, how has that changed over the years? What was it like when you first started?
Well,
after the painting?
When I first Yes. When I first began staging, I had never even heard of the term at that point in time, because we're talking back in the late 70s, early 80s. I staged my clients' houses more for my own addiction. You know, I sold real estate. A client would have a home, and I knew that, you know, just like getting ready to go on a blind date, if we spiffed everything up, then they had a better chance of selling that house. And so eventually that service that I offered my clients, that I didn't even call staging, people started requesting it. They saw the difference. You know, it was about combing your hair and putting your lipstick on before you walked out of the door. We had to do that to homes as well. At the very beginning, when the staging world started becoming more prevalent, it was all about creating a big bowl of oatmeal. I never really liked the initial staging process. When I started learning that, hey, this is an industry out there, but I saw what people were doing. I thought, really, is that the best we can do? We have this room filled with neutral colors and no personality, because that's not the way I've been approaching it. I love that we have evolved and that we're actually creating beautiful rooms now. We understand our target market, but our clients are much more sophisticated than they were 20 years ago as well. So we've had to keep up with them.
That is true. What did you, if you didn't call it staging when you began, what did you call it?
I called it property ready. I called it property ready. And to me, it was just, again, a step in marketing that house. And primarily I was dealing with occupied homes. That, you know, that was the predominant house that was on the market at that time. So, and I would always say to my clients, if you're trading in your car, do you detail it? Well, we need to detail your house because it isn't property ready. You're not going to get the most money. And then eventually when I started hearing of this industry, then it's like, okay, that's fitting into what I think you need to do.
I did a little bit of staging, and when I call it, I mean, I think the one interesting thing is kind of like decorating or designing. It can mean so many different things. I did more of what I would call a walk and talk staging, where I walked through the home, gave them first impressions, told them things to do. And a lot of times, at least from my experience, and I certainly don't have the depth of experience that you have or that other stagers have. And I did not start with blank rooms. So I was trying to, as you say, spiffy up what they had. It was even small things like put all your blinds at the same level. You got your blinds at 4 different levels, and it's distracting me in the room. You know, I used to always say things like, you made it a house, now we have to make it you made it a home, now we have to make it a house. We got to dial it back just a little bit. You know, but even just the small things, think about the front porch had a dead plant on it. You know, could we get rid of the dead plant on the front porch? Because that's the first thing I see when I walk up to your home, or, you know, just little stuff. And I remember when we looked at houses, oh my goodness, we'd walk in, people would have their underwear hanging up to dry. I mean, they'd have junk all over that house. And I was thinking, you knew we were coming, like you approved for us to walk in here. And even if we were friends, I don't want to see this. I don't know you, and I seriously don't want to see this. Do you know what I mean? There were some homes that the house could have probably been great, but the way people lived in it was so off-putting. I can remember backing out of the door and go like, I'm not going in that house. That's gross. And I enjoyed that, but I remember I moved out of that when I moved more into the CHF role and all of that. And that's when people were starting, at least in my area, to come in and want to stage the empty homes. That had not always been a thing. You just went into the empty home and bought the empty home. And I saw that when the staging, if you will, of the occupied homes worked so well, I saw it start moving into then furniture rentals, or you have a warehouse and you're moving things. And that was when I backed out because I didn't have the inventory and my business was going in a different direction. So I just I stopped at that point and moved into a different direction. But do you When did you see, or do you still see the changing? You mentioned the color changes now that it's not, everything's not white and gray in the staging. And so there's color and there's interest. And I think, as much as we can slam and hate on HGTV and some of those, I agree. I really wish they'd tell the real numbers that things cost and how long it really takes. And we only did the one wall in the room and the other three looked like junk, but whatever. But they did start to show homes that had been staged.
Right. Right. And, I think for anyone listening to this, that staging is part of their profitability. Think about other ways, again, to tell the story. So back in the 80s, when I began doing realtor presentations, I knew I had to be very visual. So I would show up for a realtor meeting with a long red robe that went to the ground, things pinned all over it. I would have newspapers, magazines, children's toys, a fake food. I would have a hairpiece in my hair with curlers in it. And then I found some cigarettes that were fake cigarettes, but they blew smoke. And I would walk into a realtor's meeting dressed like that and say, how many of you are trying to sell a house that looked like this? That visual was so powerful that people that hadn't even thought about staging suddenly went, oh yeah, I get it. So my big red robe really helped to sell staging jobs. And for any of you that are out there pitching those realtors, do not walk in the door sharing with them blah, blah, boring statistics that they've already heard. Get their attention. And again, that was part of my comfort with not being afraid to be silly. Because I knew that visual and my being silly was going to make them laugh, but most importantly, it drove my point home. And so that also then started that whole mindset. It impacts the way that I stage, because it's not about creating a room of neutrality. It's about focusing in on what I call the money makers, the price validators. What makes this house worth the price tag? It's the fireplace, it's the view, it's the hardwood floor. So your staging has to draw attention to all of that kind of thing. And I think for many, they start staging because they simply love decorating and they can't understand the difference. You need to pull back. You need to make bigger impacts with bigger pieces of things. You need to leave some empty tables. You need to whisper the beginning of a story. You don't need to tell the whole story. Let them put the ending in, and that is that they're going to buy that house and move in there and make it theirs.
Right. That's exactly what I'm talking about with the whole, it was a home and we have to pull it back a little bit, but we don't want it so stark that they go, this is so boring, I don't want to be here. It's pulling out enough that they can see themselves being interjected into that particular setting. What do you think is the big difference between, outside of that, between decorating and staging? Because the skill sets, there are many skill sets that are an absolute overlap.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. You are definitely right on that, Michelle. There is an overlap, but the difference is, decorating, I am going to personalize it. I do care about my client's opinion. When I'm staging, I don't. But you need to find a way to help them to see, that you're working for them, even though they may not like what you do. Also, just the layers that you apply to a room. If I'm decorating a room, I'm going to apply more layers of interest in there than when I'm staging. I think the other important thing that we need to keep in mind is early staging, we did not pay attention to vertical space in a room. We would bring in great furniture, we'd maybe add an area rug, throw in a lamp or two. It is so important for us to bring the eye up in a space with verticality. The trend is then towards naked windows when we stage. You need drapery panels in there because it brings the eye up, it lifts the ceiling line, and you're selling more space. So I think we need to look at the room in its totality, bringing in all the zones.
I would agree with that. I remember one of your courses, you showed the room broken into multiple zones. It was a decorating course, but certainly could still be
Mm-hmm.
used for staging. And you talked about the three zones and where things should be and how much should be in each zone. I thought that was very interesting. And I do see now, to your point, I'm seeing more staging where they're literally hanging art on the walls. I remember in the beginning stages, if it was an empty home, they wouldn't touch the walls. That nothing got put on the walls. It was everything just looked like blah and blank, and then there was furniture dumped in the room. And I think the staging today is making it look a bit more complete. Like you said, it's bringing the eye up and taking it around the whole perimeter of the space, and then but giving it so much room to
Mm-hmm.
rest, so that in a home, your eye is jumping from item those layers that you're talking about. That in staging they're not there the same way, so you have room to rest and kind of insert, oh, I could see my this here, I could see my grandfather clock there, you can start to see
Right.
your life being kind of overlaid, if you will, into that space. And so I definitely, now that I'm thinking about what you're saying, I can see how that's transitioned. What other transitions have you seen in staging over the years, starting from the we're going to get it sell ready kind of thing to here we are now almost doing, like you said, the verticality, the full kind of design in the space?
Well, one thing I think is that when you look at a strip of paint, there are typically 7 values on a strip. And for many years, we locked into that value 1 or 2 at the very top. Now we're using value 3, 4, or 5 in a room. We're not afraid to put that depth of color. So if you have a room that has a lot of wood in it, and then you paint the walls all white, sometimes you actually shrink that space because you've created such a contrast. So I think there is less fear of using deeper value colors on the wall. I think also, statement art, as you mentioned, has become a very important part of what we're doing. And statement art that, you know, helps them to remember that home. They say the average buyer looks at 12 homes before they make a decision. So part of what staging has to be is, again, memory makers. Remember the house that. And it's not remember the house that smelled like pets or cigarette smoke. Remember the house that had, the dark gray or the black dining room in it. So as stagers, we have to make some statements in there. And that's not what we did. As I said at the beginning, it was about creating a big bowl of oatmeal and nothing stood out. We have a responsibility to add style to what we're doing.
I love that. And I know that I want to touch on your education, but there's much more education and availability and opportunities in the staging industry, which is under that whole umbrella of interior design, in my opinion. There is just a lot more emphasis. There's RISA, there's all these other conventions and support and state support that we did not see years ago. Staging, again, was kind of a newer thing. It was hanging out over to the side. And now you're starting to see it being pulled kind of more under that umbrella of interior design, but to also have its own specialty functions and conferences and support and education. Now, you've been providing education for years. I mean, of course, like I said, I knew you 10 years ago and you were providing education, and you had been doing it years before that. What was it that made you think, I really want to give back to this industry? I know the nurturing part you've mentioned, but you've had a lot of years of teaching and sharing.
So this is my 20th year as an instructor. I founded the Decorating and Staging Academy in 1999. Quite honestly, when I began training, it was much like when I began decorating. I didn't have the faith in myself. People said to me, "Can you teach me how?" So it was kind of like I'd reverted back to that personality and can I bring anything to the table? And then when I started doing seminars and doing things like for CHF Academy and, and the very early CHF Academy back when Cheryl had it speaking at those conferences and stuff. And suddenly I went, oh my God, they didn't know that. To me, it was so simple. It's just like the things it's like, well, doesn't everyone know? No, they didn't. And I found that I had an ability to break a room down, to make people look at it in a way they had never thought about before. So it was that, thank you, Lord, there's another talent that you gave me. But it was those previous 20 years of experience of being in the trenches that really helped me. So I think, as you said, there's such a great support system out there for both the design and the staging communities anymore. And there's so many great mentors out there that can really help people to succeed.
What do you love teaching the most?
I love color. I absolutely adore color. And, that's why I created a color system 12 years ago. I love teaching marketing because it seems to be everybody's Achilles heel. It's like, all right, Michelle taught you how to get profitable. Now let's get you some clients. So, I although marketing isn't the design part of it, it is where people tend to fall down. Obviously, I still love teaching every facet of design and staging as well.
So where do you see the industry going? So we've talked about where it's come. Pull out your JoAnne crystal ball. Where do you see the staging going? Yeah.
I think that we still have a long time that this can be a very strong niche in our industry. I think that we're going to find people becoming more creative in their staging. And I love that. I think we're going to really start seeing personalities out there where we've, for years we've been told to put our personalities away. I think we're going to start creating more statement stagings, never to overpower the house, but that signature look that I think we may start seeing within certain staging companies and or real estate companies, that it's like, this is our look and this is what we're selling because you understand your target market. I think the world of design, I think we all need to take a really deep look, because the way that we made money as a designer 20 years ago, 10 years ago, I'm sorry, but it's going away. And so for a lot of our industry, there can be a great snob factor in what we do. And I think we have to become much more real. My clients back in my early years were always people with money. My clients today are the average person that deserve a beautiful home as much, and they may not be buying a $5,000 sofa, but they deserve a beautiful room as much with their $1,000 or $1,500 sofa. So I think in the design industry, we need to look at other ways to make ourselves profitable and also to open up our market potential.
Okay, so I need to just talk about this snob factor for a minute. You can't throw that out towards the end of a podcast and not know that we got to talk about that for a minute. All
right.
And I just want to say this. I'm trying to think of how not to climb up on my high horse as I share it. If we truly have a heart of nurturing, we truly have a heart of design, and if we truly love people, I think that there is a market segment. There are many market segments under that umbrella of interior design. And there should be, as they say, no shame in your game if you are delivering a great product and a great service at a great price to any market segment. And it absolutely, look, I'm talking profitability. I'm teaching people to make money. But here's what I'll tell you, and JoAnne, you know this. I'll teach you to make money no matter which part of the market you serve. I am not just trying to help the design industry people that are in that $10 million range serving the $10 million clients. You can come and call me if you're making $100,000 in total sales and you're serving clients that have a home that's $250,000. I can still tell you how to be profitable there. And like you said, there's room for everybody.
Right.
If we narrowed this down that we were only going to deal with the top, oh gosh, not even 1% of the population, right? If we were going to narrow this down that only those people with X amount of money, we would need all of us as designers. We would need very few of us in the grand scheme of things. And so the fact that we have a market that is so open, if I could just say anything, it would be know why you're serving others, know what you love to do, and own it. Just own what you do. Love people, give them, the best product and the best service at the best price for both of you, and keep going. That snob thing just drives me. I've probably got 2 or 3 emails that everybody's feeling less than because of all the social media that they see, and they think that they can't serve this client, or we don't have that lifestyle in where I live, and I still have a heart for design. And I'm like, then design for your people, right?
Right. And Michelle, let me make another point in regards to that. I think so often we connect with a client and in our mind, we think, okay, I'm going to make as much as I possibly can off of this particular client on this project. If we would start thinking more of lifetime clients and not one night stands. So I'm working with Susie Q right now, who can afford $1,000 sofa. And 5 years from now, they've landed the job of their dreams and the home of their dreams. And now we're buying that $5,000 sofa. And what, for me, I'm working with 3rd generations of families. I worked with grandma, I then worked with mom, and now mom has passed me on to her daughter or her daughter-in-law, and thank God I'm still relevant, that I can appeal to them. But I think if we would have less mindset about, I only have a chance to make money off of this client one time, we have an opportunity to make money off of that client for as long as we're in business, as long as we maintain that relationship. So if I don't make you feel bad about buying $1,000 sofa now, you're going to love me when you have more money to spend. Now, let me be fair, too, to those clients those designers who have said, this is the target market I want, and I only want to do high end. And kudos to them. I mean, that's wonderful if you want to build a business in that range, and if it's working for you. But for some of the others, as you say, there is no shame in doing a smaller project. And I've made a good living for a lot of years doing exactly that.
Right. It's about capitalizing on the opportunity in front of you, right? And making, like, I have people that go, hey, I want to scale my business back because I have grandchildren. Okay, then let's make money in the scale back. I want to scale my business up. Great. Let's make money in the scale up. It's about that relationship building. I am a relationship salesperson. I don't ever want anybody to feel coerced to work with me, to buy anything, right? I don't want to coerce them into buying a product that they don't need, whether it's a sofa or education or anything else. I want them to feel that they were honored to be able to do that, and that it was an investment that they were willing to make. And so just, as an industry, we could probably have a whole podcast on snob factor. And I love beautiful things.
Absolutely.
I can walk in a room and my husband swears I have a radar for the most expensive. I'm like, da 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 da. I'm like, oh, I love that. And they're like, oh, 5,000 a yard. And I'm like, oh, that's why I love that. Like, I don't gravitate to the other. But it doesn't necessarily mean I can afford to put all that in my home, or that every client I were to talk to could afford that. And so just knowing that our goal is to meet each person that we're serving where they are, to give them the best, and then to have the honest conversation if it's not worth it. I mean, we certainly don't want to throw the snob factor so far out the window that we just go, yeah, please go buy that off the back of a truck in the parking lot, because surely that will hold up for years in your home. I mean, we get
Right.
far the other direction.
Well, and I think we have a responsibility simply to educate our clients. First of all, with all of my clients, I create an itemized budget list, because I never ask, what is your budget? Instead, we build from the floor up. What does the room need? Okay, so we need an 8x10 rug. We need a sofa. What are you comfortable with paying for that sofa? What are you comfortable paying with that rug? And sometimes it's just educating and telling them, yeah, you can buy an $800 sofa. You're probably going to get 18 months to 2 years. As long as I educate them and help them to understand what the trade-offs are, then I've done my job. But they don't need to feel bad. I mean, some of my best clients have been the people that live in this modest little house, and we transform their living room on less than $5,000, and they're crying when we're done, because for them $5,000 is somebody else's $50,000. I love those clients. Now, again, I want to make sure I made money. I'm not going to give away myself all the time. I have to make a living, and I'm very clear about that. But I can make a room look beautiful no matter what your budget is. And I love that I have that philosophy. But again, the beauty of this is we all own our own businesses.
That's right.
We all have different business models. And what works for me may not work for you, and what works for you, and that's okay. We're not meant to be cookie cutter.
Oh, absolutely. And again, just the fact that there are so many market segments. There is from the entry level into design all the way up to the highest of the high, and then everything in between. And so it's really also finding where you're comfortable playing. I know you've been to Dubai and decorated, and then you've done it in, like you said, in a 5,000, family room. Knowing how to play and all those different market segments is truly important, and knowing where you're comfortable and where you want to spend your time, or how you want to balance between the high and the low, right? So, JoAnne, what are some
right? I was just going to say, I've selected $20,000 sofas for people before. So like you say, that flexibility also helped me to be better at what I do. And as you say, that understanding that we all deserve a beautiful home.
So what is one of the next profitability goals in your business?
So here I am. I will be 67 in May, and I have spent the last 20 years traveling. I do not want to travel as much anymore. So I am changing and offering a lot more online. My website is undergoing a complete makeover. So my profitability goals in this next year are going to be more about how to make money online, how to build more of my online status. I have a great status in the industry organically. You and I, through the years, teaching at CHF Academy and all of those things, many people know who we are, but I'm not the buzzword online, because that hasn't been my focus. So my profitability goals going into this next year are to build more of an online presence and create more training for the everyday decorator and the luxe designer.
I love it. So your website that we're going to send everybody to, it'll be in the show notes, is howtodecorateinstage.com. And you have 2 Facebook groups. We'll have the links there too. One is How to Decorate and Stage, and the other is Interior Decorators Set on Success. And so people can find you there and online, and you are always so helpful. I love how I see you, and we're in multiple groups together. You're always quick to offer support and advice, and I appreciate that. You know how you mentioned earlier in our conversation about the 21-year-old right out of school it's very different when you're jumping into the business of design versus what you learned in a classroom setting. And I think it's important that, as some would say, that we leave a trail of breadcrumbs, like follow this, or this works, right? Or don't step there. We put up the warning sign, or beware of this if you take this route. And I just really appreciate how you have done that in the industry. And I just want to tell you that from 10 years on the outside looking in, your laughter and your ability to bring humor and to be real and to laugh at the same time has really just been an asset to the industry as a whole. And so thank you for that. And keep doing the funny stuff, because, oh my goodness, I still think about it.
Well, I wasn't very funny today, but hopefully that'll make someone seek me out so I can share a stupid story with you or something. But yes, approach life with joy and a desire for profitability. And when you quit loving what you're doing, think about how you can evolve and change what you're doing so that you can recapture the joy of the process.
I love that. And so when all this is done, I totally think you need your own stand-up. I think you should do stand-up. I would fly to Pennsylvania to see you.
I agree.
I agree. I'm out there with that red robe on.
I agree. I agree. I think that will be my next career. Maybe in my 70s, that's the route I will take. I'll keep you posted on that.
Yeah, let me know. I'll book a flight and come out and see you.
All right, great.
JoAnne, thank you
Michelle,
so much
for inviting me to
today.
be here.
You're very welcome. Have a good day.
Okay.
Thanks to JoAnne for a great time together today. I do need to find more laughter in my business, and sometimes it's hard to do when you're alone, but I'm up for the challenge, and I hope you are too. Make sure, as you're making your plans for this year, that you are considering saving money to pay your taxes and, of course, your profit. Check out my Master Your Profit course for help in doing that and in implementing the Profit First money management system with a focus on our industry. And all things, remember, profit doesn't happen by accident.